Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Mike Casamass. I'm the VP of Solutions with Henry Schein. We're going to wait another approximately 1 minute to get started, just to give some an opportunity for folks to log on. So just hang in there. We're going to get started in 1 minute. All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's Mike Casamass. I'm Vice President of Solutions with Henry Schein Medical. And today I'm being joined by Eric Smith, who's the CEO and founder of Talentcare. We are basically driving into our first webinar on employment branding, which is part of a larger webinar series called The Business of Medicine. And the reason that we decided to do this webinar series is because we oftentimes work with a lot of our customers that, quite frankly, do a phenomenal job, whether they're practices or health systems, in delivering the best clinical care possible. But it's very obvious that in many instances, our customers struggle with the business of medicine. And we've been asked over and over again to provide solutions and also education in this area. And as a result, that's exactly what we're doing. We are starting off this webinar series with Eric Smith from Talentcare, who's going to be talking to you about employment branding. And the reason we're starting here is because really two reasons. First and foremost, we believe that this is an area of incredible significance, especially given what's going on in the industry and the fact that there's going to be a tremendous fight for talent in the future. Okay, and then on top of that, this is the area that in many instances, both practices and health systems seem to invest the least, and it has the opportunity for the greatest return. As you can see, we have 5 different webinars that are part of this series. We hope that these are going to be of interest to you and that you'll attend some of the others. In terms of housekeeping, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. So this webinar platform does give you the ability to ask questions. We are going to wait to answer questions until the end, but please feel free to use the functionality to pose a question. I'm going to now turn it over to Eric Smith. He's going to walk us through the webinar, and then we're both going to join a little bit later to answer any questions. And we thank you for joining us, and we hope that you learned something and you're able to take it back to your practices and hopefully have it have an immediate impact. So with that being said, I want to turn it over to you, Eric.
Well, thank you, Michael, and we really appreciate the partnership we've had for, gosh, how long has it been? 4 or 5 years with Henry Schein. We're just pleased to be working with so many clients on that, and so thank you for the opportunity today to talk about, as you say, a really important area. I'll just pop this open and we'll kind of get going. So we're going to today discuss employer branding and some things that sort of sit around employer branding, to really help you understand why it's important and how it fits in to sourcing and retaining talent. We all know that healthcare talent acquisition is difficult in good times. It's even harder now, and there are all sorts of headwinds. So the question is, of the things that one can do or the things that you might not have fully done, what really gets the bang for the buck? And so we'll spend some time talking about that today. I will not talk about myself now, but I will talk a little bit about the company, because it does say founder next to my picture. They keep putting this slide in these webinars that I do. So we started the company almost a decade ago in healthcare recruiting exclusively. Since then, we've expanded to some other services, businesses, but we spend a lot of time, 80% of our business is still healthcare. So we know it deeply and have been in it for quite a long time. We started our lives as recruiters and with some differences and used psychometric testing and so forth. But over time figured out, because it's hard, what it is that you should invest in to make it easier. And those things include an applicant tracking system that's elegant, good data and reporting, a career site that works, but also employment branding and reputation management. And that's what we'll spend our time talking about today. So what are the challenges? What's brand got to do with it? And some practical tips as we kind of go through some real life examples. So there's probably not much on this that would be new for any of you. We all know that, again, healthcare has been difficult, but it's worse now. People are coming out of the healthcare labor market. People who chose that as a career through the pandemic have chosen other careers now. They either see healthcare as too risky, or they've just had the opportunity to find other jobs during that period. Of course, there are a certain number of people, about 4 million in the United States, that are disengaged from the labor market altogether at this point because they're just scared of working and being in a workplace where they might get COVID. So there are all sorts of headwinds. There always were, and they're worse. We get the question a lot: is it going to get better? Aren't we kind of out of the woods now? Isn't the economy rebounding? Won't things get back to normal? Won't people come off of their unemployment benefits and start to work in bigger numbers? And the answer is, it certainly has happened this summer. That's been the case. But as you have all seen, you're seeing around the country, various places, a re-tightening up, a reinforcement of masking, those kinds of things. And one can imagine where that might take us. And so we tell our clients, don't plan on anything getting a whole lot easier anytime soon. And in other words, you must learn to compete. And one of the things that we'll talk about today is employment branding and reputation management as a way to better compete. You may know the author and thinker and researcher Simon Sinek. He's done some really clever things around brand and so forth. And if you haven't, you should look him up. He does a little 15-minute version of Apple versus Dell, and they start with why. And he always starts with the question, why does a company exist? But he also extends that to, why should I work for you? And, this quote from him, I think, kind of says it all. People who don't believe what you believe, or people who don't see you as their tribe, are just there for the money, to oversimplify it. And so the question is, how can you from the very beginning engage an applicant, a candidate, a job seeker, with what it's like to be in your tribe, at your practice, in your company? And then how can you make sure that's a consistent message all the way through onboarding and all the way into their time with you in the company? Because that's how you find the right people who will appreciate you, and it's also how you keep people longer. And so we'll spend some time digging into that a little bit. So you might ask the question, what is an employer brand? Don't I have a brand? Isn't it my consumer brand? Don't job seekers and employees want to know what my consumer brand is? So these are some examples of what it is and what it isn't, right? And I'm going to start with what it's not. A lot of people think that it's their culture or their mission or their value statement. It's not any of those things. Those things are important, but those are different things. It's not those things. It's not, you don't compete on an employer brand of compensating people well and giving good benefits. That's, a lot of people think that that's their differentiator, their employee value proposition, if you will. It's not. It's not what people buy. That's the people who are there for your money. And it's certainly not the patient brand or the consumer brand or the client brand for your business. Those are two different things. The purposes are different. They may use the same techniques, perhaps in developing them, but they are not the same thing. So what is it? If that's what it's not, what is it? Well, first, it's a statement that allows the job seeker to understand what the employees say about working there when they're not listening. That's a way of saying it, right? In other words, what's it really like to work there? What are the really authentic and differentiating reasons that someone would apply, click to apply, and then of course stay with you long term? So it's not coming from management. It's not coming from the owners. It's not coming from the docs. It's coming from everyone who works there. And they're explaining why that's an important place for them to spend the majority of their adult lives. And another thing that's interesting about it that people don't usually recognize is it's just as focused on retention as it is attraction. People think of brands as the reason to buy something or to become an employee of something in the case of employer brand. But it's also why you come back over and over again. The reason that people buy Tide over and over again is it's a brand that they have trust in and they just keep buying it. And you want your employees to be staying as well. So yes, it's important for attraction, but it's just as important for retention. So so what does all that mean? And why do people neglect their employer brand? Well, you'd expect me to say this, but we have no idea, right? You think about the consumer today, no one even buys a sweater without looking at reviews, reading what this person said, it's way too small, great color. I mean, they're into that detail. I watch my family do it. Your family does the same. You may do the same. So it's all out there and available, and that's how people make decisions. Well, guess what? That's also how people make decisions about where they're going to apply and also where they're going to work. And so just like you can go to Yelp and Google reviews and so forth on the consumer side, similarly, you can go to places like Glassdoor and Indeed and learn about approval ratings of the CEO, for instance, and you can look at what people are saying, and you can look at the averages, and you can look at the distribution of the reviews, or how many 5s and how many 1s, and all of these kinds of things. And this is what people dig into. So your brand is not only what you say about yourself, but it's also important to defend that brand or defend your reputation, what we call reputation management, not just on the consumer side of your business, but also on the employer side of the business. So, if you step way back from it and put it in the broader context, then reputation management and employer branding is really at the front end of this whole platform, this whole foundation and ecosystem that you need in order to win in healthcare recruiting and retention. So it's at the front end. It's an important piece. If you don't set out your stall and make that story clear, it's very hard to make any of the rest work. It's at the front end. It's going to attract the people it attracts, and so get it right. But then that, of course, flows into the career site and the applicant process and how you select people and those sorts of things, which we will touch on but won't go deep in today. That flows into data and insights. So if you have that platform built to the left, these two on the left here, then you now have data which helps you understand what's going on in your recruiting operation, and therefore you can inform and make changes to process, and then you can get to recruiting excellence. So there's a little bit of a feedback loop here and so forth, but just putting it in the context, if you were to walk away with like, what are the chunks I have to think about in terms of improving my ability to compete? It's really all 4 of these, but it always starts here, and that's why Henry Schein asked us to start with the employer branding piece. So I'm going to now go look at a couple of real life examples, and I'm going to use the example of a smaller practice, and then I'm going to show some larger ones, and I'm going to just give you some real examples of some of these things, because I think it always helps to be able to see what we really mean by these things. So this is a smaller group randomly selected called Capital Medical Clinic. It happens to be here in Austin, Texas, where we are, but that's also pretty random. Don't know them. But this is their site. This is their main website. And if I knew this from being a local person, or if I had searched it or somehow landed on here, roaming around on the internet, I might be interested in a job. It's not obvious. There's nothing up here that says careers. Generally, we prefer that. So, because you want to make it easy for the job seeker, and we're going to pretend we're a job seeker right now. So I have to dig around in here. I finally found it misspelled under career opportunities. I guess we spell funny here in Texas. And so there it is. So I had to dig a little bit for that, and you don't want to make it hard because people are impatient and they leave. And they're also doing most of this on their phone. 80% of your applicants are applying on a smartphone, not on a computer. And so your systems and the way that you approach people needs to recognize that. So if I click on medical, on career opportunities, you see it goes straight to Indeed, which is just one of many job boards that you might post your job. So like many small practices, these folks sort of kind of gave up on the idea of actually having a real applicant tracking system that takes in candidates from many sources, healthcare job boards, unemployment boards, diversity and inclusion boards, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and your own career site. They kind of gave up on that, and they just said, you know what, we're just going to put it out on Indeed and hope for the best. And these are their 4 jobs. That means they're probably spending far more money on their job ads than they need to be. And you can see they've got each one of them marked as urgently hiring. That's because they're kind of invisible. So not only do they not have a brand, but they have no way really for anyone to understand what it's like to work there, anything about that at all, any nuance. And it's just you can only find jobs in one place. Contrast that with, this happens to be a Henry Schein client, Tenafly Pediatrics. So if I go to their site, so this is their site. It's the equivalent of the site we just saw for a Capital Medical Clinic. And we never have anything to do with our clients' main sites. And this one's appropriate given what they do, and kind of cute, and certainly makes a statement, and it would be attractive to their clients. Before we started to work with them, they didn't have anything about careers. Now you see they have top right a little careers button there. It makes it really easy for me to find if I happen to know this place. It's been recommended to me, friend of mine, and so forth. And so you're making it really easy for the applicant to find you. And when I click on that, you'll notice it didn't open up a new window at all, but it's branded. This is now in our world. We created this for them. They now, through the applicant tracking system that we provide them, can post out jobs in real time all the time. They can stay ahead of their needs. They're in control, and they're not just on Indeed. These jobs, of course, are also then by our system distributed out to Indeed. So you want to make sure that it's clear, and you want to make sure that people can find it. So that's kind of a small company view. But now I really want to dig into the employment branding piece. And sometimes you find this in some of the larger ones. So again, I'm going to use an example of a randomly selected immediate care group called Physicians Immediate Care. And again, hard to find, where it is, pay online, search, when it's under urgent care for some reason. Way down here at the bottom, I can find careers. And then unlike the other group, this group does have a career site. And you might look at this if you don't spend your, most of your time looking at career sites and thinking about the data and the efficacy of them like we do. You might look at this and say, well, it looks kind of nice. It's got some branding, it's got some bright colors, work where it matters, your next opportunity awaits, kind of strong language and so forth. But if you really think about it, is it telling you as a job seeker why you should come there? It says our patients come first. Okay, lots of people say that. That's not really differentiating. It just doesn't give me a sense of what's different about working here. And I can work in lots of places if I'm an MA or an MP. And so what is it that's different? So even though they've got this nice stuff here, it's really not differentiating in any way. It's not helping me understand, what's compelling. And then they kind of defend to some of these things here, which again, many people in healthcare will talk about. It needs to be done in a way that really doesn't feel like just a thing that they put at the bottom of it, but it's the center of the message. And so they've missed an opportunity here to really tell a story. I think they probably have one because they've taken great care in this. But the way to discover that is not to have the marketing department come up with some things about flexible schedules, but is to do those all staff surveys and those focus groups and so forth that we do when we build an employer brand. So it kind of misses a little bit there, unfortunately. I'm now going to show you a couple of examples of good, a couple of different examples of what an employer brand really can do and what it looks like in terms of reputation management as well. But I'm going to start outside of healthcare. I like to do this because everyone understands burgers, but you may not all understand the different parts of healthcare that you are each in. And so this is a group of, I don't know, 40 or 50 locations. It's a family-friendly burger joint. This is their branding. We had nothing to do with it. And if you click jobs up here on the right-hand side, you go to a career site, which does the two things a career site should do. It should give the employer brand clearly stated, and it should make it easy to find the jobs. And so this one does it all on one page. Employee life is the employer brand here. And again, all staff survey, focus groups, and so forth. And you can see immediately that these words are not what you'd expect and do reflect the authentic feel of the place, I can tell you, because we go there regularly. So sincerity, smiles, imagine being able to stop and take time to really care for people. It's true that we did some nice wordsmithing of this, but this is the stuff that came out of the focus groups and the surveys. Mastering a magnified you, becoming a better employee, a better leader, a better person. That won't attract everyone. It won't attract any old person who wants to be a cashier. It'll attract the right people who resonate with this brand. And they look at this and they say, these are my people. This is my tribe. I'm going to apply here. And as long as that brand is consistent all the way through, they're likely to join you and they're likely to stay. Family to fortify you. And then there's some, things that you can explore. Perks and benefits are not unimportant. They're just not a brand. It's good to know that it's a good place to work, but these are not the pillars you notice. These are just additional pieces of information they can explore. There's a video here that's fantastic. So you can imagine I'm looking for a job, I land here, and in 3 minutes, I can get immersed in some content that really helps me understand it. And if these are my people, I will apply. Now let's talk about the defending of the brand a little bit. So this is on Indeed, which is obviously an important job board in the world today. These are those same brand pillars. So they're, no matter where the candidate goes, whether they're reading a job ad or whether they're on Indeed, they're getting the same brand pillars, the same themes, and maybe in a different format, but they're getting all of those same stories so they can understand what the brand really is. And then reviews, what we're doing here, most people don't even look at their reviews. When they do, they don't respond to them. So you can see here, Hat Creek is responding to each and every review. Well, those aren't actually, that's not really Hat Creek doing it, it's us doing it in this case. But responding to reviews is how you defend your brand. Why even bother? Gen Zs and millennials, which is basically people up to 40, which is the majority of the people you're hiring, expect an engaged employer like other generations didn't. And the first way you can signal that is to be responding to these reviews, because they will come, like when they search for sweaters, shopping for sweaters, they will come here and look at those things. Obviously, this works also in the healthcare world. This is another client, similar sort of thing, and why you love it, and brand pillars that really come from the various methodologies we use, again, all staff survey and so forth. So that's really, I hope, helpful in terms of understanding what all that looks like. So if we just wrap up a little bit here with perhaps just a few more slides. So you might ask, how do you build a brand? Well, the first thing you do is you dig deep with your team. That's surveys, all staff surveys, and the focus groups that I mentioned. Analyzing competitors are really important. You can create a story that your employees might tell you, but it needs to be also differentiated from what your competitors say about themselves, so that you get the right people applying to you, and you're able to compete for that talent. So that's part of building an employer brand. And then you construct those differentiating pillars, taking that data, absorbing it, understanding it, and then building the 3 pillars that really pull together the themes. And we have so much fun when we review those with our clients, because they're it's great feedback for the management team and for the team itself. And then finally, pushing that out everywhere, right? So these pillars don't just live in a PowerPoint. They're on the career site. They're in job ads. They're on your career, they're on your career site and your job boards. So it's used even in your responses to reviews. So it's used widely. I already talked you through those things. So deploying it then is just getting it onto the career site, painting that picture. When you get it onto the job profiles, I showed you an example of the Why Join Us, then has that brand. And you're continually refining that, enhancing the reviews, defending that reputation, as it says here, really making sure that that we're giving current employees the opportunity to leave reviews, through a simple mechanism, just a reminder mechanism, because current employees tend to be more positive than the disgruntled ones that leave, and you need a little bit of balance in that. And then, of course, just watching the reviews and responding to them. What does all this do? It all sounds nice. It looked pretty. I showed you some pictures. At the end of the day, when you invest in employment brand, a high SEO career site, and reputation management, this is the kind of uplift our clients experience. So we've gone back and looked at this obviously over time. So number one, a big lift in visitor traffic. It can be huge, or it can be, huge and what seems reasonable here, which is 60 and 30%, but up to hundreds and multiples of it, and from all sources. So you're really particularly increasing that career site flow, which of course is free candidate flow. You don't have to pay for that. Bounce rate is another thing we look at, and that's just keeping low the number of people who come in and say, not much here, I can't see, I'm going to bail out. That's within 10 seconds. That's what a bounce is. And with employer branding, you gauge people, they stay longer, they stay there that 2 or 3 minutes, and then finally they convert more often. We always increase conversion because the story is clear, and they are attracted to it, and they'll hit the apply button. Conversion means click the apply button. So that's kind of how we sum it up with the numbers and the value proposition. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for the time and for listening, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
That was great, and thank you, Eric, for that presentation. So a couple of questions from our attendees. The first is about how long does it take to build a strong employer brand?
Yeah, if you go through the process, as I mentioned there earlier about, all staff survey, focus groups, individual interviews, and then spend the time crafting those pillars, then coming back to the management team. When we do it, it can take anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks. It averages out about 2 months to really do it right. It's not a thing that you have a few people get in the corner and write something up. And that's what people miss. They miss the idea that this really is something to take seriously, just like your consumer brand. We sometimes say it's now time. If talent is constraining the growth of your company, maybe it's time to invest as heavily in your employer brand as you have in your consumer brand or your patient brand.
Terrific. Does Talentcare build the working website, and does Talentcare manage all of the ongoing updates?
We do. When I showed you, for instance, Hat Creek, you went to hatcreekjobs.com. That's a site that's completely connected to the client's main site. They worry about the revenue side. We worry about the employer side for them. You actually get some benefit in the fact that the traffic goes in between. Google likes to see that, so they give you more credit than you would otherwise get. But we do manage those. We make sure that it's up every day. It's posting the jobs correctly. When our clients change their colors or their logos, we change those, and we don't charge them for it because we think nickel and diming is kind of dumb. So we do. We make sure that all of that is updated, and then we report out on a monthly basis, sometimes quarterly, depending on the client's preference, the metrics. What are the career site metrics? Those things I ended with. What happened last month versus the month before that? What are we seeing in the market? How's reputation management happening? Is it getting better, or is it getting worse? Which locations in reputation are really struggling? Those kinds of things. So we sit with our clients and advise that way with data in front of us.
Yeah, that's a nice piece of it as well. So what is the average implementation time to get the project from start to having the new site built out, developed, and up and running?
Yeah, the long pole in the tent is actually the employment branding work that you asked about earlier, that someone asked about. The first question, it doesn't make it any longer. In other words, that eight-week period covers getting ready. You've got the job boards branded. You've got the jobs out on the job boards. You're beginning to manage reputation and all that on the job boards, reviewing or responding to reviews, and of course the full career site with the branding on it. So again, the whole thing takes about 2 months, generally speaking. We can do some things a little faster, but end to end, getting everything up, it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks.
Eric, this one is, I'll try and word this. I guess the question is around who manages you had touched on a little bit earlier, replying, right, and engaging with bad reviews and good reviews. Is that something that Talentcare manages? And if not, does Talentcare work with the practice to train them on how to use the newly developed platform?
Yeah, so just generally, we find that this is one of those things that busy practices, busy recruiting teams, depending on the size, this always falls to the bottom, right? There's always something more. You got to go get that MA, got to go do that thing, got to post that job, and responding to reviews always drops to the bottom. So we do indeed do that as part of our reputation management service, where we do really fundamentally two things. We have a platform that makes it really easy for your employees to leave reviews, and so we invite them on a regular basis, and they do that in higher numbers, and we respond to the reviews that are left. The way we do that is we agree a library of responses that weave in the brand pillars. So we'll have a basic framework for if someone is a positive review about compensation, then we're going to broadly say something like this. And if it's a negative one about management, we're going to broadly say something like this. So we agree that with our clients up front, and then real people, not a robot, which some people do, actually respond on your behalf. If we get any that break the rules of Indeed, then we get those taken down. We have the relationship and we know how to do that. If someone is accusatory and it's something that your ownership or your counsel or your HR department needs to see, we of course escalate those before we respond. But for the typical ones, we can do that, and we do it regularly, and that therefore you always look like that engaged employer you want to be.
Gotcha. And then there's a question regarding pricing, and I think, Michael, if you want to handle that, just pricing and tiered pricing, I would imagine that the customer should work with their Henry Schein representative.
Yeah, that's correct. Although I think, Eric, you can give a ballpark, can't you?
Well, I showed you two things today. I showed you the simple, kind of capital medical clinic and Tenafly example, and that depending on number of locations and some other things like locations and brands and so forth, that's some low numbers of hundreds of dollars a month, no implementation fee. We can have that up in 2 days. It doesn't have the full employment branding. It doesn't have everything that we're talking about when we talk about reputation management. But for those smaller practices, it gets you visible and jobs out, and it's a great place to start with an applicant tracking system to boot. The other piece that we looked at, which was more around Hat Creek and MD Now, that's a full brand and a career site and all of those kinds of things. And that you can think of that as tens of thousands of dollars upfront in a project, and then maybe only $1,500 a month, plus or minus, again depending on some things. But it's we continue that reputation management and that job distribution for you. So that's kind of what that looks like, roughly speaking. We obviously need to understand a bit more, but it's one's bigger than the other.
Yeah, and Eric, what I'll do is I do want to put it in perspective, because at the end of the day, you're driving a positive ROI. If you were to compare what you do for employment branding versus the existing efforts with someone trying to just source and screen using Indeed and some of these other job sites, or even contingency recruiters, you're going to likely pay less using your service and doing a great job of front loading the effort than always relying on the back end. And I think that's something that if there's someone who's looking that is a larger organization, we can help you run the numbers and show you what the ROI would be, where the expense savings would be realized, things along those lines. So I want to make sure everyone on this call recognizes that this is going to streamline your operations, and in the end, it's going to be cheaper than piecemealing all of the different things that you're already paying for.
Yeah, I will say one thing. Literally this morning we were on with another Henry Schein client who has issues everywhere, MAs, LPNs, and providers, and they have pretty good volume. But this is also true of smaller ones. And he pretty quickly got the point that you might spend $40,000 or $50,000 over in a year, but that's maybe 1 or 2 search fees you can avoid if you convert just 1 or 2 docs, right? It really pays for itself in space, and that's not even to talk about all the other benefits of retention and lower level roles and so forth. So the ROI is, as you say, Michael, really strong.
Yeah. Hey, Justin, are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll do a recap.
Nope, that's all.
Okay. So, Eric, I can't thank you enough. I think this is an area that, in many instances, we see that the customers that we serve oftentimes don't invest in, in employment branding, but it's going to become much, much more important in the future. So a couple of different key takeaways that I wrote down listening to you. First and foremost, the competition for talent in the future is only going to become more difficult for a number of reasons that you mentioned. A focus on employment brand is absolutely critical, and really it should become before the sourcing of candidates. It's equally as important, but yet it's rarely focused on, and that's something that we want to convey to everyone on this call. Potential employees, they want to know what it's like to work for a company. They want to know that authentic feeling that they would get working for that company or that authentic brand that exists. In addition, prospective employees, they want to see an employee or an engaged employer. And I can't tell you the number of times that I go on and I look at reviews and I don't see anyone responding. And for me personally, it immediately turns me off. And then the only other thing that I would say is, hopefully from what Eric just mentioned, you can see that there's a lot of things that you can do on your own. By all means, you can stitch together a lot of the concepts that Eric mentioned. But if there is interest, if you would like to learn more, if you'd like to have an audit that's done on your practice, Eric and Talentcare, the team from Talentcare, would be more than willing to do that. We want to offer that up to everyone on this call, and you can either reach out to us directly, or probably the easiest way would be to go through your Henry Schein representative. They can get you scheduled with Eric really at a moment's notice. And with that being said, we thank you for your time. We hope you learned something today, and we hope that we see you back on the rest of the series, which is the business of medicine. Enjoy your day, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.